In producer Carol's house over the past week or so, a wasp's nest in the attic has caused many a sleepless night for her, apparently. And in fact, I think I've got a sneaking suspicion, although Ken tells me, my guest, I may have done away with it without knowing, but I think I might have had wasps building a nest in the shed in the back garden. If you think you've got them and what kind of creatures they are, I've got Ken Chapman from Harrier Pest Prevention with me in the studio. You'll have to give me, Ken, because of course I suppose it happens to you every time that when you start talking about insects and you know, these little creatures and things, people start scratching, don't they? I've got this terrible urge to scratch my head at the moment. But is that normal? When
it is, and I'll just correct you for me. It's Ken Chadwick.
Ken Chadwick.
Yeah, it's very much the case, and I always say that's the reason why I find myself a single chap, because as soon as I tell a lady what I do for a living, she starts scratching.
Wasps and hornets, what's the difference?
Superficially, the only difference to the naked eye is the hornet is very much bigger. It's around 3 to 4 times the size of a wasp. But here in Lancashire, we simply don't get hornets. They're restricted really to the southern part of the country.
Well, that's a bit of a relief anyway. So lots of people I've spoken to seem to be discovering nests in attics, garages. Is that normal for them to build them, and when will they have started building them?
All nests start off in the spring. The first time we start to get a nice period of good weather, usually around late March, early April. All the nests start off then. They can't start at any other times of year, so all the nests that are there now are around 4 months old at this time of year.
So is that when you're called in then about this time?
We always used to reckon we started getting the calls out round about the last week in June. But this year, because we had an especially early spring, a warm spring, which suited the wasp perfectly, we actually started getting the calls mid-May. So the nests this year, I would guess, are around 3 to 4 weeks in advance of what they normally are at this time of year.
So what are they doing at the moment in the nests then that they've built? And normally, I mean, it used to be a thing where you'd see wasps probably August, September, and they'd be dying off then, wouldn't they? To a degree, yeah. At this time of year, the wasps are very busy. The nests are in full swing. They're producing the larvae and the young and enlarging the nest. Later in the summer, once that job has finished and all the larvae have been produced, the wasps kind of become a little bit, well, they're unemployed, basically. Also, the diet changes and they start to feed on fermenting fruit, which is, of course, alcohol. And so, just like humans, they're unemployed, they're drunk, and they start causing problems. You see, that's why when you're at the pub in the beer garden, you see all the wasps just flying into the lager glasses.
As part of the life cycle, the wasp gets a reward for feeding the larvae, which is the larvae secretes a sweet, sticky substance that the wasps crave. Once the larvae have all been produced, they're no longer getting that sweet, sticky substance, and therefore they seek it elsewhere, which is the beer gases and the jam pot and things of that nature.
A little bit about wasps. I mean, did they serve any purpose at all?
Yes, this time of year they're actually doing quite a bit of natural pest control in the garden. They feed their larvae on aphids, on grubs, on caterpillars, things like that. So they're actually helping you out in the garden at the moment.
So what makes up a colony then of wasps? Who would we find? You know, what's home, or who's in the home for the wasps?
Well, it starts off in the spring with a single queen. The queen is the only one that survives the winter. She hibernates, and when she wakes up in the spring, she builds a tiny nest about the size of a walnut, or a little bit smaller than a golf ball. She'll lay 15 to 20 eggs in that, and 10 for those until they hatch out and they take over the enlargement of the nest. All the wasps in the nest at this time of year are sterile females. There are no males and no new queens yet. As we move probably into perhaps another month's time, into mid-September, the nest then changes and it starts to produce the new males and the new queens. It's funny you mention hornets, because the new queens which are produced are about 2 to 3 times the size of a normal wasp. So in a month's time we will start to get calls from people saying they've got hornets, but they're not. What they are the new wasp queens.
You see, I think as you mentioned there, the start of the nest, I think I might have got the brush in the shed and give it a bang, you see, but I don't think there was anything in it. It was just a little bit like white paper, if you will, just very thin. and I was able to get the brush steel and knock it off, and I think I've done the...
I hope you're a qualified pest controller.
Is that one of the tools of the trade?
It is indeed, yeah. The standard 3x2. Yes. It is exactly what you describe. It is called wasp paper. They make paper in exactly the same way that we do, in that they mix rotting wood with saliva, and it is exactly paper.
Well, I have got rid of that, or I do see occasionally just the odd wasp hanging around.
You will completely get rid of it. This time of year, the wasp nests will be ranging in size from the size of a football up to a large medicine ball. The tiny little ones that you see. If you go in most people's lofts and garden sheds, you'll see those. They've been started by a queen, and then maybe she's gone out, she's been killed or whatever, and the nest never develops.
Where's the most unusual place that you've been called to get rid of a wasp's nest?
Oh, well, I've been in several prisons. That would be one of the unusual places. Yeah, they seem to like religious institutions as well. We seem to have done quite a few in convents and churches this year. Yeah.
Would you find them sort of high up in the belfry, or do they like the lower ground, or do they like the higher ground?
Well, it's interesting because up until about 5 or 10 years ago, we only had two main pest species of wasps in the UK, but about 20 years ago we got a new species in from the continent. It's been dubbed by the media the Euro wasp, and it's had a lot of press time because it is slightly bigger and more aggressive than our two native species. And one of the problems with that wasp is that it tends to build its nest outdoors in bushes more so than our indigenous species. So people come into contact with it more, and they might damage the nest while they're clipping the hedge or something like that. And so they are more dangerous to people merely because of where they're building the nest.
I mean, if you've got any advice to people, is it to, when a wasp comes near you, just stand still and freeze, or because you see people flapping their arms around, don't you?
Well, it is a silly thing to do. I mean, all the wasp is doing is looking for food when it's near you. It's not going to sting you just for the fun of it, but obviously if the wasp senses that it's in danger because you're flapping your arms around, then you're likely to get stung. Yeah.
Have you been stung a few times?
Stung twice yesterday.
Really? Yeah. I mean, do you carry your medical equipment with you to put the cream on when you've been...
Fortunately, I personally get very, very little